Good morning. It's time for me to give an art update. Over the weekend, I did some planning for this week's comic strips, and I painted several pages in my sketchbook. But first, let me mention something that's a little curious. It's actually been raining quite a bit recently. Where I live, this part of the year is sometimes it's hurricane season, and then other times it's the dog days of August. So, depending on the year, this month is either completely miserable and hot, or we will get periodic rainstorms. And some of those rainstorms because of an approaching hurricane. Hurricane could be a couple hundred miles away, actually, or it could just be because of this time of the year. So, August is a very strange month. If I were to reform the calendar, I would actually take several days out of August and put them into February, which is a month which deserves a bit more affection. Anyway, I finished the next chapter in this book. I finished the chapter on where do cartoonists get their ideas, which was very interesting. And then the next chapter is going to be about putting together a magazine cartoon, which I find very interesting because it's not really the type of cartooning I want to do, but I like to learn everything that I can. It's interesting to think of different ways to tell stories in this medium. Last night I went ahead and read January of 1950 for Pogo by Walt Kelly. Seminole Sam was being a bit of a con artist, like the Duke in the Dauphin and Huckleberry Finn. I did notice this one strip stuck out to me. So we're in the middle of a story, and with Walt Kelly, when I say stories, I mean sort of a sequence of how to explain this, sort of a making it up as you go along, sort of a stream of consciousness, dreamlike thing. Each strip is sort of a story, and the strips go together, but there's really no structure. There's really no beginning, middle, or end. Walt Kelly was just sort of just playing along. But he halts the middle of the story, where Albert has swallowed some mice. And then we have essentially a charity announcement for the March of Dimes. And I found this interesting because when I read this, my first thought was, you know, if I were Kelly, I would do two strips for this day. One being the this charity strip, and then the second one, which continues the story so that the story doesn't pause. And then when he collects them into a book, which he was doing back then in the 1950s and 60s, the story wouldn't stop, and then this could be placed at the end of the book. But then the thought came to me, well, why am I thinking about pausing the story? And the reason is because Walt Kelly used to do things like this. Or should I say, later on in his career, maybe after the 1950s, he will sort of do this. He did when he started getting into politics. Often he did double strips. One were apolitical. They were called the bunny strips. We can talk about the bunny strips later. When a new paper picked up Pogo, he had 2 weeks worth of introductory material to be your first 2 weeks, so people would catch up. But that wouldn't interrupt the strip for other papers. And when these were collected into paperbacks, sometimes he drew additional material, not really plot material, but sort of backgrounds and things like that, so that they fit in the page a little better. We'll look at examples of that later. So the point I'm making is, when I thought about interrupting the strip in a different way to do it, it occurred to me the reason I had thought that is because I had read so much Kelly in my youth that some of his tactics, I suppose, had imprinted themselves upon me. Alright, let's see. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next of the 100 best comics of the century. Why not? Let's see. Whoops. Okay. 1994, Nick Downs. We have some surgeons or doctors. I suppose what bothers me is that it's the one job where you can't say, relax. It's not like you're performing brain surgery. So here we get where the story is really told with the the dialogue, and the picture really just has to tell us the setting and the characters. So it's not like we have to have a specific character. Two things I'll point out. I mean, one, the composition is nice and simple. We have a good triangular composition. We can juxtapose the squares, which really just keep our focus here. But we barely even look at this. We really look more at the text. Two things I'll point out. It's interesting that this is written by hand rather than typed. I don't have any specific conclusion for that. And the second thing is the phrase performing brain surgery or doing brain surgery, because that strikes me as that's a set phrase which has really stayed in comedy. The two phrases are brain surgery and rocket science, because outside of comedy we don't really say that. If we really were to talk about brain surgery, I think we would actually avoid that phrase because it's somewhat comical. We might say, I don't know, cerebral something or neurological something. And of course, the term rocket science also only exists in comedy. And it's also sort of a remnant of the 1950s when we talked about rockets rather than space exploration and NASA and space stations and things like that. We actually don't really use the word rocket very often in common parlance in terms of space travel. Alright, next time we'll look at a new comic. But anyway, for today I will pencil and ink this strip. And then I have some good news. I have maybe 24 more pages left in here. And I hope I will finish painting this within a week-ish. As soon as I finish painting this, then I can set full attention to making a couple of paintings at the State Fair. I'll probably do both of them at the same time. So early next week, I will get out an all-purpose sketchbook and just sort of jot down some ideas. One of the ideas I have is actually this particular strip, because what happens in this strip is we meet a magical creature, and my idea is that he's found inside of a inside-out rainbow. I'm not really sure what an inside-out rainbow looks like, and since this is a black and white strip, there are limitations as to what I can do with a rainbow. So I was thinking, well, maybe for the State Fair I will try to figure out what that would look like in painting form. Alright, well, that's my update for today, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.